Good morning, students. So we were discussing about the traditional models or the models which are based on phase development approach, that is SDLC, and we have done waterfall model. The second one we did was prototype model. Now the third one is an iterative model. So what does the name suggest? Iterative. Iterative means when the software is developed in iterations, that is in a staggered way. Like, let's suppose we were supposed to build 10 modules in a software. Modules means function. So we will be delivering say 2 modules in first iteration, then another 3 modules in second iteration, maybe 1 module in the third iteration. So we keep on developing our software in different iterations using the, you can say, the phases of SDLC. Now this is what the typical, you can say, the benefit that we get from the SDLC, that we can deliver our software as per the customer's need or the constraints of cost and time, and we can deliver him as is suitable for him. So this is the best suited model for customers. So what does this iterative model is? In an iterative model, initially a partial implementation of a total system is constructed, so that is it will be delivered in a deliverable state. So simply it is said that we are not going to develop the complete system as we did in waterfall and prototype model. Like, what we do is we prepare the complete application or the software, we develop it and then we deploy it. Either it is your waterfall model, or if it is your prototype model, once the prototype is developed, in order to get the requirements, then we develop the entire software and we deliver it to the customer. So what happened is the complete software was built all together, while in this case we are not going to build the complete software at one go. We will be making partial systems in the form of iterations. Like, for example, let's take an example of graphic era. We are supposed to make a full-fledged software for graphic era university. Now we know that if you are going to develop a graphic era software for graphic era, it will take at least an year in order to implement the entire functionalities which are functioning in your university. Since we have so many courses, we have so many branches, we have so many things, library, admission and everything, so many modules are there. So it will take minimum of an year to develop it. Now to wait for an year and to get those, so what about the functionality which is running right now? So, shall we stop the university? No, it must run. We must have some automated system in place in order to carry out our functionality properly. So if you are going to wait for an year, so entire system will come down. So what is required is, instead of getting all those requirements developed and deployed at the end using waterfall or prototype model, what we can do is we can develop the software in stages. Like, as of now we require a registration module, registration for counseling, right? So I'll since I have limited time, I want this registration module in, say, let's suppose we have counseling on 7th of August, right? So I want this registration module immediately. So I'll ask the customer, don't give me the complete software as of now, I just need a registration module in a day, please deliver me with this, right? So the customer can deliver that registration module immediately, because it's just a simple functionality of 1 or 2 pages, right? You will develop it and deploy it. Then after 2 days we want a counseling software, so we'll ask the customer, now we require counseling software in 2 days, so kindly deliver that. So bit, you can say, complex as compared to the registration. So 2 days or 3 days or a week is enough for that, right? So we can get this second module deployed in another 1 week, that is second iteration. Then after counseling we require admissions. So understand this way, we don't require modules, all modules at one time. We need these modules as per the demand or the timeline, you can say. Like in the admission process, you require registration module first, then you require a counseling module, then you require an admission module, then you require is an examination module, you require a library module, you require a result module, right, evaluation module. So these are step by step, right? So this is how customer wants the software practically. He doesn't want the entire software to be developed at one go. He want as per his needs, as per the market demand, as per the, you can say, constraints. Maybe he is having a constraints of cost and time. We have seen how cost can affect this is, say the entire software would say require 10 lakhs, right, and we don't have 10 lakhs as of now, or if we do have, why to like spend our savings on this, since we do not require all the modules right now. So we can ask the customer, since I have a limited budget as of now, so deliver only those modules which I require immediately in the given timeline, right? For example, I can ask, I just have a budget of 2 lakhs as of now, though the overall software would take 10 lakhs. So I'll ask the customer to deliver me only say 3 modules which can be easily developed in 2 lakhs right now. When I'll have more budget, once the revenue is generated after using this software 3 modules, like if you go for counseling, definitely admission will take place, so you'll have money. You can ask then the customer to develop more modules since the revenue is being generated, and you can use that money which has been generated in order to develop the further modules. So this is what it suits the customers, it suits the timeline, and it suits the cost constraints of the customer, right? So this is a best suited model that will see further that iterative and incremental approach is the best policy when you're going to develop the software. We'll see this with the help of a diagram also, right? So what does the diagram says? In the first iteration, you will develop the modules which is required immediately. After some time, if the customer feels that he require another module, then you can start with the second iteration using the same approaches or the steps of SDLC. Though externally we haven't represented here iterative, but actually it is iterative waterfall approach, because you require a feedback part to go back and make the corrections or the modifications. So it is iterative waterfall approach which is working here. In each iteration, you develop the second iteration, you give it to the customer, right? After some time, maybe a gap of 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, again one more iteration is required or module is required, then again we'll repeat these steps and deliver it to the customer. So understand this way, the entire software is not developed in a single iteration like waterfall and prototype model. We are developing different iteration having different set of modules. Now the second feature is we are using iterative waterfall approach in each iteration, right? Third thing is the second iteration, right? Or you can say each iteration is fully functional in itself, standalone. Like registration module is developed in the first iteration, so it is fully functional in itself. Then you have a counseling module. So counseling module can individually also work, or you can interface these 2 iterations, that means combine these 2 iterations, right? And both of them can work together, like registration and counseling. Say next year, this time you got it in a staggered way or a planned way, but next year, since the software is developed, you will be using it. So this entire software is combined and one full-fledged application is developed, say in a span of 2 years, right? Then from the 3rd year onwards, your complete software is developed, you can use these. So individually also these iterations can work, while as a whole the complete software can also be worked. So we say that the software is developed in iterations, as well as the software is incremental in nature. Incremental means, say the first iteration has just 1 module, second iteration has 2 modules. Now when you combine these 2 together, altogether we'll have 3 modules developed till now. So it is an increment to the previous one, some functionalities added, right? In this iteration more functionalities are added or more modules are added. So each subsequent iteration has some additional functionalities. So this is what is said, increased functionality is added. Defects, if any, from the prior delivery are fixed and the working product is delivered. Now what does this mean is, say you have developed an iteration here and delivered it to the customer, but it has certain error, right? It's not working properly as per the customer's requirement, or the requirement got modified, so you need to modify that module also which you have developed and delivered to the customer. So what you will do is, in the second iteration, if it is a major change, you will go for a second iteration in order to modify the existing functionality which was developed in the iteration 1. It's not that iteration 2 is for a new functionality always. No, it can be for modification if there is a major change. If it is a minor change and can be accommodated in the same iteration, yes, we go for it. But if it is a major change and it requires a rework, we go for second iteration also. So it is said that if there is any defect, we keep on fixing it and delivered in the iteration. The process is repeated until the entire product development is completed. So it says we can have n number of iterations. These iterations are not fixed. It may take 10 iterations also, it might take 50 iterations also, it might take thousands of iterations also. This is not fixed. That depends upon the customer's requirement. And finally, once all the iterations are developed, we say our software is finally developed. The repetition of these processes are called iterations, right? Why iterations? See, these requirement analysis, designing, coding, then testing, implementation and maintenance, right? That is, these steps are getting repeated in each and every iteration, right? So this is what is repetition of these processes are called iterations. At the end of every iteration, a product increment is delivered. So after each iteration, a product increment on the previous one. Increment 2 is like having an additional functionality over the previous one, right? So this is how the software is developed using iterative model. So phases we are aware of, we have requirement gathering and elicitation as first one. In the designing we plan, implementation is coding, testing is to test as per the customer's need, deployment is giving it to the customer for use, then a review, final review whether it is working properly, and maintenance is if any changes required. So these are the phases. We are not going into details as we have done it earlier. Now when to use this iterative model? When the requirements are defined clearly and easy to understand, we use this model, right? It's not like prototype model, the requirements are not clear, so you are going to develop the prototype. No, we have well defined or understood, like understandable requirements, and we keep on delivering it in iteration. So all the requirements we have it. Second case, when the software application is large, make it a point when we have a large and a complex software, then only we go for iterative approach. If it is a small or a medium sized project, we avoid iterative model because here we have repetition of steps. So ultimately you are repeating the same steps again and again. So the cost will be more, definitely. Time required is also more. Effort required is also more. So unnecessary wastage of resources for small and medium sized projects. Now the basic criteria of using this iterative model is when the requirements are unstable. Unstable means it keeps on changing and there is a possibility that it will change in future also. So we use iterative approach. Say you started with the first iteration having a few requirements in hand, and by the time you developed it, the requirement got changed, the customer himself got the change, a market trend has changed, or any process or technology have changed. So your software will fail if you are using just this waterfall approach, right, or a prototype approach. So if there is any sort of major change, that can be implemented in the next iteration. Further any changes comes during the development, you can adapt to that change in the next iteration, right? So there is a scope of like accommodating these changes in different iteration. Most of the requirements are known upfront but are expected to evolve over the time. Evolve means they'll change. The requirements are prioritized, right? What I said it, if it is a graphic era university software, so I said I require a registration module immediately. So I have prioritized among all the requirements. I said I want this immediately. So this is what we can prioritize the requirements as per the timeline it is required, and we can ask the customer to develop as per the prioritization done. There is a need to get the basic functionality delivered first. So basic functionality means core modules are supposed to be developed and delivered first. Then the secondary modules, the associated ones which are not the core ones, can be delivered later on. A project has lengthy development schedules. Why lengthy? If you're developing, let's take an example. If you're supposed to develop 10 modules and altogether it will take 1 year, right? That is using a waterfall approach. But if the same 10 modules are developed using an iterative approach, so what we'll do is, since you're repeating the steps, time required is more. Apart from this, I'm asking the customer as per my need to develop the software. I'm asking registration module to be delivered in this month, and then I'm saying after 2 months I need another. So there is a gap of 2 months between these two. That is idle phase. Similarly, in the second iteration I got 2 modules. Then after 6 months I am asking the customer to develop another 3 modules or 1 module, any number of modules. So again there is a gap, right? So this gap is included in the overall cycle of the software, right? So the development time as well as the idle time, that matters a lot, right? So it has a lengthy development schedules, right? A project has new technology, so second iteration can be used, or the subsequent iterations can be used to adapt to that new technology. The domain is new to the team. Say the domain that the application you are developing of a particular domain is a new one, then also iteration is a good approach. Such methodology is more used in web applications and product based companies. Just an example to it, web application and product based companies. Now what is the advantage of using iterative model? First one, you can develop prioritized requirement first. So customer will be more satisfied because his immediate requirements are getting fulfilled by the customer. He don't have to wait for years to get the entire software developed. Initial product delivery is faster. Fine. Like in the waterfall model, the complete software was delivered very late. This leads to dissatisfaction, right? Customer was in dilemma. But in this case, since he is getting the working software very early, so it is good. Customer gets important functionality early. The core modules are delivered first. Lower initial delivery cost. Say overall software I said requires is 10 lakh, but you just have to pay 50,000 or say 20,000 just for a module immediately. So lower cost for the first or the initial modules. Each release is a product increment, so that the customer will have a working product at hand all the time, right? So additional requirements are being added and he is having something to work upon, right? He is practically working on his software. Customer can provide feedback to each product increment, thus avoiding surprises at the end of the software development. Say in the waterfall model, there was a major, you can say the drawback. The entire team spend a lot of resources, time and effort in developing the software, and at the end might be it get failed because you haven't understood the problem clearly. But in this case, since you're delivering increments, the software in increment, and the customer is working upon it and giving you the feedback, right? So there is a least possibility of any such risk of getting it failure or rejections. Requirement changes can easily be accommodated in iterations. Testing and debugging during small iteration is easy, right? It's clear. If you're going to test 10 modules, it will definitely becomes a complex task, but you just have to simply check 1 module or 2 module, it becomes easy. So testing is identifying the error and correcting it, while debugging is identifying the exact location of the error so that you can assist in testing, right? So these two terms must be clear to you, and the difference what is testing and debugging. It is easily acceptable to ever changing needs of the project. fine, we can that is unstable requirements are there, it keeps on changing, so we can easily accommodate those changes. Risks are identified and resolved during the iterations. Limited time spent on documentation and extra time on designing. So our aim is just to deliver a working software immediately. So most of the documentation is like in the other model has been reduced here. Now coming up to the disadvantage of iterative model, it is not suitable for a smaller project because the same steps are getting repeated, so extra time, cost and resources are required for that. More resources may be required, clear. Design can be changed again and again because of imperfect requirements, fine. So you have to rework. Requirement changes can cause over budget, fine, this is also true. Each time you have to modify the requirement, that means you're working on the same thing again and again. So time is also getting increased as well as the cost will also increase. Project completion date not confirmed because of changing requirement. It might take, I said, 10 iterations also. It might get completed in 50 requirements also. It might take n number of requirements also, that depends. Requires effective planning of iterations. Iterations are something which has to be planned properly and carry out the task and deliver each iteration in time. Requires efficient design to ensure inclusion of the required functionality and provision for later changes. So whenever you're making an iteration, you have to keep in mind that you have to make changes in future. So always try to make a design in such a way that it has a scope of making a change. We'll see this feature in the design phase, that we make our design functionally independent. That means it must have high cohesion and low coupling, so that you can make the relevant changes also, or you can call the modules at or import or export the modules to and fro in the same project or on different project. So there are something which has to be implemented, right, in the design to, so that there is a scope of making a change in future, right. So this is what requires early definition of a complete and fully functional system to allow the definition of increments. You must know the complete application, what is required to be then only you can plan for the small iterations, what can be done in each iteration, so that you can complete your task on time. Well defined module interfaces are required, as some are developed long before others are developed. What do we mean by interfaces is, you can say admission process, right. Say admission process generally takes place in the month of July, right. Now with this admission only our library modules depend. With this admission only the database that is being filled, for result also we require this data, right. So there must be an interface or linking between these modules. They are not standalone entity, they are linked to each other in one or the other way. Why? To get the information of the student again and again when we have filled the information of the student during the admission, or you have a student information in SIM software, student information system. So why to fetch you can say the student details again and again in subsequent semesters? You have it in a centralized place. So there must be a proper interface to store and retrieve the information from there. Total cost of the complete software is not lower. I've told you is, since you are repeating the steps again and again, right. So you are going to hire an analyst, designer, coder for long duration, and you have to pay to them. The major cost is involved in the salary that is being given to the development team members. Since you are repeating the task, so again extra cost and effort and time is required for that. Third thing is, if I do a task right now, okay, let's assume with the example of a gold. 20 years back, the cost of the gold was somewhere around 6,000 to 8,000 per 10 grams. 10 years back it was somewhere around 20,000, right. See how much it has increased in 10 years of span, right. Then now 5 months back it was around 25 to 30,000, and during this pandemic situation it drastically got increased to 54 and 55,000. See the change. If I was supposed to buy the gold 20 years back, I have the same amount, I would have get huge amount of gold in that. But now if I have, now today if I want to buy a gold, so ultimately the cost is high. With that money I can just have a minimum of the gold only. See, this is what I mean is inflation rate is getting changed. The tax, if we would have done all together in the past, that would have cost less. Now if you're doing the same task now, since the inflation rate has increased, it will cost double, triple or 10 times. The best example is a gold. Second example is of a construction. If you're supposed to construct a house like 20-30 years back, you would have completed 2 BHK in just 8 to 10,000. But now if you want to construct a 2 BHK, material required is same, right? But it would cost somewhere around 15 to 20 lakhs for that only, right? So this is what we are saying. If it is waterfall model, we would have developed the entire software in 1 year of span. The cost is for that 1 year. But since you are developing it using an iterative approach, having a gap in the subsequent iteration, and maybe the entire iterations is delivered in 5 years of span, so definitely the cost will be more, the overall cost, because you have to take the summation of the individual iteration and then you will be calculating the final cost. So this is what the advantages of iterative model. But even then, though it has lot many disadvantages like cost and time it requires is more, but this is a best suitable approach for the customer, because he's getting the working software as and when he required, according to his budget and all the requirements or the changes which he wants to make, right, is getting implemented. He is getting the working software very early. He is able to give the feedback and get it modified. So ultimately customer is happy, and our aim is to satisfy the customer's need. So this is the approach where the customer is, like you can say, more satisfied, right? So this is what we have done, the iterative approach. Similar to this, we'll have an evolutionary model also. We'll see in the next lecture. Thank you all.